Hello, hi Ruchi. Great to have you here.
Hi Sharanya, thank you for the warm welcome.
I speak to you almost every day, but it's great to have you here in a session where you can impart this interesting discussion to the rest of us as well. I think before we start the discussion, Ruchi, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce you and the tremendous work that you've done in the space of marketing, sales, and business development to everybody here. Ruchi is currently the partner management lead Meta India. She comes with 12 plus years of experience in sales strategy, in e-com, digital advertising, general trade, and modern trade, which makes her an expert in everything to do with sales, be it market planning or building a go-to-market strategy for brands across the country. We at Social Beat are fortunate to work with Ruchi and her team at Meta very closely and have had an opportunity to have many interesting discussions about scaling direct-to-consumer brands through Meta over the past few years. Again, great to have you here. Thanks for sparing some time to spend with us to share your strategic views on how to scale D2C brands with Meta. Thanks, Ruchi, and looking forward to the insightful discussion with you as always.
Thank you so much, Sharanya, Sunil, and the entire Social Beat team for such a warm welcome. And I did, of course, attend a couple of insights which Daman and Arjun just shared before me. So I'm just going to pick it up from there. And like Sharanya mentioned, I also come with an experience of working in general trade, modern trade, e-commerce across channels. So probably can provide a bit of view on how a direct-to-consumer strategy, is here to stay and is a long-term play versus a fad, which few years back it used to be perceived like a fad, but it is a long-term bit and it's here to stay. So thank you once again. I do have a small presentation, which I would love to walk all of us through. And at the end of the session, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions. So Sharanya, if I can take over and share my screen. Thank you. If you can confirm to me if my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start with a quick concept of how we at Meta look at direct to consumer, and I'll introduce you to a concept called discovery commerce, which we look at within the organization. So I'm here to talk about how do we enable direct to consumer journeys, and we're here to partner with you and help you on your D2C journey through our solutions, supported with our ecosystem partnerships and amazing agency partnerships like we have with Social Beat here. So jumping on to the concept I was talking about, which is discovery commerce. So all of us are well aware of e-commerce, where people find products. It's a direct to consumer channel where it's easier for consumers to find what they need. But what we want to do is something slightly more revolutionary, where we want products to find people. And I'm going to talk about this concept of how a lot of marketers and D2C brand owners can leverage this concept and help grow their business on our platforms. Before we do that, I do want to start with a mix of some success stories across Indian brands. So, and all of these names are no surprise to any one of us. Mamaearth, which entered the Unicorn Club in this year, is started off as a purely D2C brand, and only when they had some set of pure online presence is when they are venturing into other spaces. On the other hand, if you see the second example, which is ITC Store, ITC is known to be having the best distribution network across the country because of its cigarette sales, when it started way back about 3 decades back. At this point in time, even an organization like that, owing to the consumer shift, also realized the need of a direct to consumer channel and launched its own ITC store. And we all can see the results which the store saw in terms of not only purchases, but also the kind of returns the brand saw on our platform. And the third example is Wow Skin Science India, which again leveraged a strategy of hybrid, which is online and offline, and leveraged our tools and solutions to grow their business on our platform. So these are some of the examples of brands and portfolios at different stages, and how much e-commerce was as a part of their overall sales. which brings me to a framework we've kind of crafted to address what are the product solutions and the needs for brands at different stages of their journey. So we classify these as 4 segments. The first one really is nascent, where digital as a percentage of overall sales is less than 5%, to consequential, which is where it gets to about 8 to 10%, to significant, where it is still under 50%, and evolved is where the majority of sales comes from digital as a medium. Now let's look at what are the needs of different brands at these stages of evolution. So during the first stage and the second stage, and I'm going to club these two together because the needs are pretty much going to be similar. What the need is to really incubate a D2C channel, because that's a channel which is missing in the overall go-to market for these brands. How can they do that? They can leverage traditional channels, inputs, insights from traditional and offline channels to actually build their D2C. So for example, brands like ITC, when they would have started building the ITC store, this was the segment they were in, and they leveraged a lot of data from their traditional channels, their offline CRMs, their data from their consumers from their offline channels, and kind of brought all of those insights together to incubate a D2C platform. What do brands need at this stage of evolution is really twofold. One, technical and startup skills, because this is purely based on technology, right? So how do you really build those skills? How do you build those platforms to ensure your D2C channel is up and running? And second, because in direct to consumer channel, the fulfillment and reverse logistics will not be same as your offline channel. So there has to be a separate fulfillment operations which need to be set up for direct to consumers. And Arjun, who spoke some time back, Arjun and I had multiple conversations on how they have set up their fulfillment and reverse logistics for Dr. Vedya's to ensure that their direct to consumer is also profitable. So it's very, very important for brands at this stage to ensure that their fulfillment and reverse logistics are set up at the right pace. When digital becomes a significant part of their brands, then there are twofold strategy every brand will need to follow. One, which are the visitors which are non-store visitors, so they don't touch their offline visitors so much, but they really look at customer acquisition. So which are the customers which they can acquire which don't visit their stores? And second, for customers who visit their stores, what categories and products they are still not buying. So it's a combination of new customer acquisition and portfolio expansion or basket expansion of existing customers which brands follow. And for being successful at this stage of your business, they need to be very, very efficient on omni-channel strategy. So they need to be very, very clear on what is their role of each go-to-market channel, what is their scale and acquisition efficiency across channels, and have the right mix for the right portfolio of the products. And when a brand has reached evolved stage, which is more than 50% to close to 90% of the business is coming from digital, the idea is to continue to drive repeat purchase and build loyalty. And also, as they build their new product lines, try to remarket that to their early adopters so that they can continue to become their advocates and their flywheel kind of continues. At this stage, it is, again, logistics continues to play an important role, but payments also becomes an equally important lever to drive to ensure that business runs in a very, continued fashion and there are no disruptions. So that's really how we look at businesses at different stages of evolution and what do businesses need at each of these stages. Now really bringing the concept of discovery commerce, how do you activate discovery commerce? I think the first step is just personalization engine. So how do you personalize your business to maximize the value? The second bit is how do you inspire your audience by building engaging services? And you can do that by ensuring that you continue to innovate with creative formats and creative services. The third step is how do you convert and retain your customers or audiences which are visiting your platforms? So how do you optimize the paths you create to serve your objectives? And last but not the least, how do you continue to optimize to ensure efficiency and measure the impact so that you can continue to refine your advertising and conversion strategy? So that really is how we define discovery commerce, because it's an end-to-end solution to drive demand for businesses. And again, as I said, it matches products to people. I'll kind of segue into an example of how do we recommend driving commerce with WhatsApp, because again, that's a very, very key element of how do you connect with your end consumer, right? And we talk about 3 entry points by leveraging proactive communication on WhatsApp. I think the first one is click to WhatsApp ads. So when you do your ads on Instagram and Facebook, the call to action there is click to WhatsApp. So we can run click to WhatsApp ads. The second one is on all your offline and online assets have QR codes, so that you can continue to have constant communication on WhatsApp. And the last one is through APIs, list messages, buttons, and multi-product messages, which is largely for through the WhatsApp Business API product. And through these powerful entry points, what you can do is actually attain all of these 5 objectives which your brand really needs. You can acquire new customers and leads, because through your ads on IG and FB, your WhatsApp ads really, you literally get in touch with the customer, so you kind of get a lead. You can continue to communicate offers to help drive conversion. You can cross-sell other products. So you can see that right from acquisition to conversion to final sale to customer relationship management, our platform really provides you an avenue to have a consumer end-to-end journey covered through WhatsApp. This is one very, very strong example of how we can leverage commerce through power of our products and solutions. Now, moving on to an additional bit which Meta continues to do is to ensure that we leverage our third-party ecosystem. So while we have our products and solutions to enable D2C journey, but we are also additionally doing is to partnering with third-party service providers to ensure that all the D2C brands, scale up to the best possible potential they have. I'm going to break down this value chain into 3 parts. The first one being creating and managing an online store. The second one being operations of transactions and payments. And the third one is fulfillment and customer management. And across all of these 3 stages of value chain which a D2C brand goes through, we have partners aligned across all of these. So for managing online store, there are 2 key problems, which brands face. One is how do they really create a website with catalog? And second, how do they continue to drive quality traffic to the website? So these are 2 key problems which we hear from a lot of D2C brands like you. And across both of these, we have third-party ecosystem which enables cataloging and website creation, as well as integrations for marketing and sales. Similarly, on stage 2, which is payments and transactions, accepting orders, managing multi-channel orders, and accepting payments, we do have third-party providers who work on order management systems and provide payment solutions. Similarly, for fulfillment and customer relationship management, we have partners who provide logistic solutions and CRM solutions. So while we have the power of our products and solutions to help you in the journey, but to manage all that is needed to succeed, we also have a third-party ecosystem we work very, very closely with. So, if I just look at this flywheel on the slide, and I want you to focus on the right side, which is your business, we want to focus on that. The starting point really is building the creative, continuing to refine customer experiences. Then you activate your plan on our platform. Our platform and our discovery commerce system finds the right people for you, delivers the right creative, measures the efforts, analyzes the results, and continues to optimize and plan and give input to your creative. So this flywheel and what we really do is our discovery commerce system helps continuously move your business flywheel to ensure that you're delivering the outcomes as per your business objectives. So this is really a summary slide where I do want to talk about how Meta as a platform can support you on your commerce journey. I think the first step is helping you implement the fundamentals. So whether it is setting up signals hygiene, or it is helping you find the right audience, or it is helping you automate some of your processes and mechanisms so that your campaign management becomes more efficient, to even slightly more sophisticated optimization techniques, as well as helping you continuously innovate on creative formats, we help you implement the fundamentals. Step 2, we continue to enable you to activate commerce solutions. We all are aware of the globally available shopping surfaces, which I'm hoping we should soon have in India. We continue to enable you on the conversational commerce journey through our click to messenger, click to WhatsApp, which we spoke at length some time back. And we have a whole suite of ads which continue to serve differentiated needs basis your business objectives, whether it is collaborative ads or it is branded content ads, depending on what is the business objective you want to drive. And last but not the least, across all of this, we help you test and scale your journey. Whether you want to test your website and app setup, or you want to understand the LTV and bid accordingly, or you want to test a new creative format, or you want to test how does your cross-border strategy work, or really helping you build a direct-to-consumer channel if you have an offline channel existing. We continue to help you test and scale your strategy and become true partners in ensuring that your D2C journey is successful. How are we also able to do that? Always on measurement strategy. So whatever changes we do, there is a way for us to track what is the outcome of the changes we've made. So, that's it from my end on how you can partner with Meta to enable your direct-to-consumer brand success. Back to you, Sharanya, Sunil.
Thank you so much, Ruchi. I think there was a lot of areas covered in such short period of time. Thanks for this really insightful session. I think I had a follow-up question to some of the things that you showed us, right? And you, even when we've collaborated with you, I think we've always got an end-to-end solutioning partner from you, be it in any area that the D2C customer has come to us for, right? But my question is regarding the stages that you showed that a brand falls into, which is from nascent to evolved that you said. And you took the example of ITC Store, which is otherwise a very evolved brand, right? Which is, you also mentioned they have a very good, their supply chain is great, and they are well established offline. So for a brand like that, you place them somewhere earlier in the earlier stages of evolution, which is based on how much they're spending on digital. So is it still important for a brand like that to test and learn, and also sort of put efforts behind brand building on digital platforms like Meta?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. It's an interesting question, and I'm going to say yes, because I come from a CPG background, and I understand how that channel operates. The power of that channel is actually distribution. So a lot of brands in that price segment sell because of distribution, and when you come on an online platform, there is literally no distribution cost you have, right? Like everyone is equal. So I do believe, while ITC is a big brand, but because it's a house of brand, and not everyone might be aware that an Ashirvad is an ITC product, for example, right? Because people might be aware of umbrella brand, but might not be aware of sub brands under the umbrella brand. And hence our recommendation to any brand is, while in the D2C space, performance marketing sounds the most lucrative because it has a direct ROAS impact, and you can see you spend 10 rupees and you got sales worth 100 rupees, but at the end of it, the funnel continues to narrow down because the clutter on the number of brands being present is also higher. A physical store will only have those many products in the store, so the choices consumer have will always be limited. So sometimes brand spends is not only about brand building, but also to ensure top of mind recall as consumers are buying those products. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because we are always tackling between a well-known brand and a new brand that is in the D2C offering space. So wanted to sort of ask you, how do you look at those two brands together? I think my second question was to do with the testing and learning part that you mentioned when it comes to creativity. And I think Meta is a platform that has always been about testing and then learning, right? And I think that there are a lot of offerings that you have that help make it easier for brands to test when it comes to creative strategies. Would you probably take some time to give us some examples of how brands have sort of worked with you closely in leveraging these offerings that you have, which are from a very creative and testing and learning standpoint?
Oh, so there are a whole lot of examples of how brands have leveraged new creative formats specifically for a lot of launch events. So we have done a lot of work with brands across segments, whether you look at brands in CPG space, We have some great case studies with Cadbury's when they had during their Rakhi last year, where they tested out some new creative formats and ensured that again they pivoted it a lot to brand because they were testing out new video formats. But I think that's one case study which comes to my mind. We had Vivo test out a lot of AR VR filters with us for launch of one of their brands. We had Samsung test out a new creative format for an unboxing campaign which they had for one of their launch. So I think across last 2 years of me being at Meta, I would have seen at least 200 plus examples of various brands trying out different formats in different categories. Samsung piloted a dealer-led campaign model where again they had differentiated creative formats, again bringing in vernacular, and had tried out different formats across different markets. So I think whole lot of brands, right from small brands, we spoke of Wow, we spoke of Mama Earth, we have Uziva, we have a lot of these D2C players trying out different formats all the time. Some work for them, but again, it's completely linked to the business objective you want to drive. So if there is clarity on what is the business objective and if this format will suffice the need of that business objective, then more often than not, the results are always favorable.
I think, and I think you've always been, upping your game when it comes to anything creative on the platform. So great to see the innovation in that space. I think I have one last question to you. I think we briefly discussed this with Tanveer as well. So Neil discussed this in the first session. But I really want to know your point of view as well. I think a lot of brands today are trying to penetrate into the smaller cities as well, not just the urban cities, right? And there is, depending on where they lie in the growth journey, their strategy is completely different. So some of the things that we do for our brands is, trying to get them to engage with the consumer in the language that they speak, which is vernacular marketing, which is one of the main things that brands bank on. What are the other things that you would suggest or the trends that you see that brands take up in order to penetrate into these markets and speak to those kind of audiences? Because it is also about convincing them to adopt a D2C offering that they are providing.
That's an interesting question. And if we were 5 years back or 10 years back, I would have said brands do brand launches by setting up kiosks in a local market in a smaller town, literally do consumer trials and ask consumers to come on their kiosk and do that trial. But we are in an era where the internet penetration in India is way past what anybody would have anticipated. E-commerce penetration has gone even wider. So I think one bit which you did talk about was how they are able to connect to the consumers, which is vernacular marketing, because that's really their aim, to kind of first connect with the consumer. But I think an important bit for them to do is also to have clearly communicated their USP. Because as I said, right, for smaller town, they are used to going to a retail store, knowing that they need to buy Surf Excel, or knowing that they need to buy a Pantene shampoo. Why do they need to buy a Mama Earth shampoo? They need to be very, very clear on the communication of the USP of the brand. Because most of the consumers, while the purchasing power is increased, but they are still very, very value conscious as we go to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, right? So what is the USP? What is the pricing parity? I think some of these additional points need to be very clear in their communication with their audience. And I think the second bit, which is really working as a trend in these areas, and Social Beat team will know it really well because they run the influencer marketing platform, is actually the impact of influencers. So I think the second thing which a lot of new brands, incumbent brands are doing to penetrate in smaller towns and cities is actually to use the power of influencers. So I think those are the two bits I would share.
Thanks, Suchi. I think you touched upon the creators as well, and a very insightful presentation. On the creators itself, I think Meta is having a lot of initiatives, including like Born on Instagram for creators. In terms of like the impact, are we like leading in the international space on leveraging creators, or are markets like US and China doing things differently or better? I think live commerce is also a trend which is picking up in some of the international markets. Where do you see in India compared to some of these international markets, in terms of leveraging the creator for driving sales?
So that's It's an interesting question, Sunil. Might not be possible for me to compare apples to apples because also the markets are very, very different. And for example, US has been ahead of us in terms of creator community for a very long period of time. But like in most other things, India catches up much before anybody anticipates because of the talent we have here. So, creator commerce, creator ecosystem has become such a key focus for us at Meta India 2022. It's one of the key priorities we have on how do we continue to enable the creator ecosystem. So I wouldn't be surprised that when you ask me this question 2 years later, probably we'll surpass a lot of Western markets.
No, absolutely. I think we have seen that transformation, especially in the last 24 months. And I think the initiatives by Instagram and Meta itself, it's grown multifold over the last few years. So thank you for all that support, Ruchi, Satvika as well. I think one question connected to D2C brands, we're seeing a lot of them scale up their presence through the performance ads. And when it comes to running video campaigns, there is some hesitation because the ROI may not be instant. It might be after a few weeks, a few months. Would you like to share some case studies of from your experience, how should brands look at that investment in video assets for top funnel campaigns or bottom funnel campaigns?
Sure. So Sunil, I'm going to start by breaking a myth that video is for branding. I'm going to first break that myth because video spans across the funnel. So you can leverage video view campaigns for, throughout the funnel, whether it is conversion, awareness across, right? So that's point number one. Point number two, we've actually started seeing a lot of brands realize, and while Arjun is not on the call, but Dr. Vedyas was one of the brands where Arjun and I have had hour-long conversations where I told him, how can you kind of, how do you really assess investment on branding in a week's time? Brand building is a long-term input. So, Dr. Vedyas has been one great example. We've seen investments from actually all the D2C brands which have grown on our platform. All the examples I shared, whether it was Mamaearth or Boat, for example, or other platforms like Zepto, etc., which are just coming up, right? We do see all of these brands ensuring that while chunk of the money is still performance, there is some part of money continuously at given intervals of time spent to ensure that the funnel doesn't dry up and you're creating brands. And also important, Sharanya asked me that question on, people are already aware of ITC. So frankly, if D2C brands will not invest in branding, then the likes of traditional brands will take over all the share on e-commerce platforms as well. So it'll be important. It's not a good to have, it's a must have for brands to invest across the stages of funnel.
Absolutely, Ruchi. And I think we've had a lot of support from the Meta team over the last few years in helping scale some of these D2C brands, including Boat, which you mentioned. So thank you so much to you, Satvika, Harry and the team, and obviously Archana, who leads the entire D2C ecosystem support. Thanks a lot for taking out the time for this discussion as well. Any final takeaways to D2C founders and teams, Ruchi, before we wind up the session?
No, I think the only takeaway I will have is when D2C brand owners look at their profitability, they should also try and compare it. If they were to go the traditional way, how much would they have spent? And some of that distribution cost saving, if that can be invested back into brand building, versus looking at only a transactional performance marketing. Some of that cost which you would have otherwise spent in sending it to 5,000 stores, like Arjun said, if you kind of reinvest that in just ensuring people are aware of your brand, your USP, I think that's an investment worth it to ensure that your brand is here for long term. So I think that's my only suggestion to D2C brand owners.